Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test.
The committee will come to order. We have members in the side room, but there are 9 markups going on, none as interesting as this one, so stay around. And we're going to go through it quickly. Pursuant to notice, the committee meets today to approve our semi-annual activities report and to mark up the Foreign Relations Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. According to the expedited procedures I shared with all members yesterday, we will consider and approve these consensus measures at the outset. Afterwards, I will recognize myself, my good friend, the ranking member, Mr. Berman, and any member wishing recognition for remarks. But without objection, all members may have 5 days to insert written remarks into the record on any of today's business. The committee will now consider our semi-annual legislative review and oversight activities report as required by House Rule 11. Without objection, the June 2012 report text that members have in front of them, which was provided in draft form from last Wednesday and posted online earlier this week, is considered read. The chair moves that the report be adopted by the committee. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the report is approved. We now consider the Foreign Relations Authorization Bill, which was provided to your office, as I said, in draft form last week, and in final form Monday morning. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 6018 to authorize appropriations for the Department of State for fiscal year 2013 and for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered read and open for amendment at any point. Hearing no amendments and a reporting quorum being present, the chair moves that the committee approve H.R. 6018 as introduced. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is agreed to. Without objection, the bill is ordered favorably reported. Staff is directed to make technical and conforming changes, and the chair is authorized to seek consideration under suspension of the rules. Members with competing committee assignments, of which there are many this morning, will be pleased to know that we have now concluded the operative portion of today's business. I will now recognize members who wish to make statements on today's bill, beginning with myself and the ranking member. I want to thank the ranking member and all members on both sides of the aisle for their cooperation in this bipartisan effort to draft and adopt a State Department authorization bill for fiscal year 2013. H.R. 6018 is a carefully crafted bill that focuses on the basic funding and operational authorities on which we have been able to reach bipartisan agreement. Despite significant efforts by this committee, the Department of State has not been authorized for nearly a decade. The last authorization bill to become law, co-authored by our esteemed former chairman Henry Hyde and Tom Lantos, whose portrait graces us now, was enacted in September of 2002. The lack of authorities in the intervening years has eroded our foreign policy leverage with our primary agency of jurisdiction, obviously the Department of State. By adopting this bill this morning, the committee strengthened its role in exercising effective oversight of the Department of State and fulfills our obligation to the American public. The text authorizes basic funding for the State Department, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, and the Peace Corps at fiscally responsible levels coordinated with the Appropriations Committee. Most accounts are authorized at the bipartisan levels from fiscal year 12 from that omnibus bill. H.R. 6018 also includes management reforms to increase the efficiency, accountability, and safety of our personnel overseas. It establishes important jurisdiction and oversight authorities in the expanding fields of cybersecurity, counterterrorism communications, and arms export controls. It helps American businesses by modifying the arms export control authorities to reduce obstacles and streamline the process for exporting selected equipments and parts. At the same time, it enhances U.S. security by increasing safeguards against the transfer of U.S. technologies to state sponsors of terrorism and countries subject to U.S. arms embargoes. For all of these reasons, H.R. 6018 deserved the bipartisan support that it received this morning. I'm confident that the strong signal sent by today's committee action will lead to prompt consideration by the full House and ultimately the enactment of these basic authorities into law. I again want to thank the ranking member and indeed all of our members for their assistance and cooperation. And I'm now
Madam
pleased
Chairman.
to recognize, yes, Mr. Rohrabacher.
Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Always, we'll always recognize you for that. I'm now so pleased to recognize my friend, the ranking member, for his remarks on the legislation.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. If this is the most interesting of the 9 markups, I'd hate to see the most boring. Madam Chairman, I want to start out by thanking you and your staff, especially Yelene Poblete and Doug Anderson, for working closely with us to ensure that this markup produces a consensus bill. The State Department authorization bill is one of the most fundamental legislative responsibilities of this committee and provides the basis for our embassies to function and our diplomats to promote U.S. national interests around the world. Our national security rests on 3 pillars: diplomacy, development, and defense. Every year, the Armed Services Committee manages to report its bill, providing authorities and resources for the Pentagon. The longer we go without providing the authority and resources our State Department needs to promote international cooperation, the greater the temptation for other committees and other departments to step in. With this bill, the committee is once again asserting at least some jurisdiction over the funding and operations of the State Department. This is an opportunity for us to demonstrate the capacity to work together to get things done and to promote our national interests. I hope we can all agree that the military ought to be our last line of defense, the option to which we resort after all other avenues have been closed off. Yet by ignoring and shortchanging our diplomats, we only increase the likelihood of an armed confrontation. Whether in Afghanistan, where a strengthened diplomatic presence is needed to enable a military withdrawal, or in the Sahel, where terrorist groups are making new gains, our Foreign Service officers are at the front lines of protecting U.S. national security. This bill gives them the tools they need to be successful. We owe the brave men and women who put their lives on the line, military and civilian alike, no less. That said, this is by no means a perfect or comprehensive bill. It contains certain provisions I'd prefer to see removed. It leaves out a long list of provisions I would like to see added. By and large, the numbers are well below fiscal year 13 request levels and lower than what I think is proper to exert strong and effective international leadership. But the chairman has worked with us over the past weeks to make the changes necessary to arrive at a text that has the best shot of moving forward. This bill contains no funding for foreign assistance programs, nor does it include any proposals for foreign aid reform. Those topics should also be high priorities for this committee, and I look forward to working with the chairman on provisions to address how our foreign aid dollars are spent. Accounting for just 1% of the overall budget, foreign assistance is a small but wise investment in a better, safer world. Our job is to ensure that it is spent in the most efficient and effective way. The bill also does not contain any country-specific provisions or any findings or sense of Congress language. While no doubt all of us have pressing things we would want to say about U.S. policy toward a wide range of countries and problems, I respect the chairman's view that progress on asserting our jurisdiction is paramount and that there will be other business meetings and other markups where those kinds of proposals can be considered on their merits. If we want our committee to be taken seriously so that our jurisdiction is protected and our views carry weight with other committees, then we need to report legislation at the very least can be passed by the full House. Let me describe a few of the bill's key provisions in greater detail. It includes a number of provisions to better protect our men and women serving abroad as well as their families. It allows the State Department to award local guard contracts in high-risk areas on the basis of best value rather than on who had the lowest bid. In the past, lowest bids had sometimes resulted in poorly trained security forces that endangered the safety of our diplomats and development experts. This bill also better protects the children of U.S. employees who attend school overseas by improving physical security at these locations. And importantly, by allowing the Secretary to transfer authorities to the recently created Counterterrorism, Conflict and Stabilization Operations and Energy Resources Bureaus, this act reflects the organizational changes that have taken place at the Department as a result of what I hope will be the first of regular quadrennial diplomacy and development reviews. The bill also incorporates most of H.R. 3288, the Safeguarding U.S. Satellite Leadership and Security Act. It was also adopted as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. This bipartisan provision would help restore America's global competitiveness in high-tech satellite technology and protect vital U.S. national security interests. Madam Chairman, you and your staff have produced a good and fair piece of legislation. Equally important, you have taken our views into account. I would urge my colleagues to do what they have already done, and that is to approve this legislation not only on its merits, but also as an expression of support for enhancing comity and bipartisanship in our committee. I thank the chair, and if you might not believe it, but this is actually a shorter statement than I was planning on giving, and I will yield back the balance of my time.
Well, I thank my good friend, Mr. Berman, for that opening statement, and I'm pleased to yield 5 minutes to Mr. Royce of California.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'd also like to thank you. I'd like to thank Ranking Member Berman for the support of a provision that I inserted in this legislation to expand the authority of the State Department to go after those who commit crimes against humanity, such as Joseph Kony. And as you know, the existing State Department's rewards program is largely focused recently on terrorists. They focus on drug traffickers. We had a hearing, Madam Chair, where we heard the results of some of that effect to the rewards program, where those who were involved in trafficking, for example, when captured, would say there was nobody they could turn to. They felt like a wanted man. Well, that's exactly the type of emotion we're trying to engender here, and this program does this. The provisions in the bill now would expand the program, and it would also target something else we want to affect, and that's transnational organized crime. There'll be a rewards program to induce people to come forward. And lastly, and I think very importantly, those who are wanted for the most serious human rights abuses. And this responds to two things. One, the growing ties between terrorists and transnational criminals. We target those who assist terrorists and those who assist the drug cartels with weapons, those involved in weapons trafficking, those involved in sophisticated forgeries, money laundering. And importantly, then, this legislation will also allow the rewards program to target those wanted for genocide, for war crimes, crimes against humanity. These are the world's worst human rights abusers that we're trying to focus on. A target of this, of course, will be Joseph Kony and the top commanders of the Lord's Resistance Army. This group has terrorized northern Uganda as well as Central Africa now for 2 decades. The crimes that they commit there are unspeakable. And in accordance with U.S. policy, a small team of U.S. troops are currently in the field helping local forces hunt for these killers. Our U.S. troops have indicated to us that they believe that a rewards program would help them if it's aimed at Kony. It will help them generate intelligence. It will bolster their efforts. They're asking for this provision. They think this can make a difference for them on the ground. And let's answer their call. Thank you, Madam Chair, for including this, and we look forward to trying to speed this legislation along to the Senate.
We sure do. Thank you, Mr. Royce. Mr. Connolly of Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know that I speak for myself and certainly my friend, Mr. Chandler from Kentucky, when I say mirabile dictu, wondrous to relate, having a markup this smooth, this uncomplicated, lacking in controversial policy riders, bringing us together on a bipartisan basis. I think you and your staff and Mr. Berman, the ranking member, and his staff are to be commended for bringing us together. I look forward to supporting this. There are many provisions in here, particularly those involving commercial satellite technology, that I think are a big improvement over existing policy, and I applaud Mr. Berman in introducing the legislation and you in adopting it as an amendment. And of course, I also associate myself with the remarks of our friend from California, Mr. Royce, in other provisions that I think are going to make a difference in human rights and getting finally Joseph Kony brought to justice. So thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to your respective staffs for your leadership and the ranking member as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chandler is recognized.
Madam Chairwoman, since I was referred to in my colleague's remarks, I just want to thank my Irish friend for his Latin eloquence.
Thank you very much. Mr. Falama-Vega?
Madam Chair, I didn't realize I was going to come this quickly. I thank you, Madam Chair, and then certainly our ranking member for the spirit of bipartisanship and working so hard in putting this authorization bill together, Madam Chair. I certainly want to commend both you and our ranking member, Mr. Berman, for doing this, and I'm sure that my colleagues on this side of the aisle are very happy that we've coming to a very good conclusion and in reaching an agreement on how we can pass this legislation as soon as we can. With that, I yield back.
Then the gentleman yields back. Hearing no further requests for recognition, I want to thank again all of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle for the hard work and cooperation that went into today's meeting. And with that, the committee stands adjourned.
Lead. Testing. Test. Testing. 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 1, 2. Testing. Testing. 1, 2.
And it wasn't like having my BlackBerry there. It was just doing it.
Stuff on Skynet.